In this video, we're going to focus on the zero product property, which is like a fancy name for a mathematical property. You don't necessarily need to know the name, but you do need to know how to use it. So before you attempt this lesson, just make sure you review and you understand how to solve linear equations. All right, so this whole property focuses specifically on zero. All right, zero is a special number, and well, there's a lot of special things about zero, but the main thing we're going to focus on, if you multiply anything by zero, it becomes zero. All right, so that kind of thing about zero makes it special in terms of solving equations. All right, so the zero product property states that if two things are being multiplied together and they give you zero, then one of them must be zero. I couldn't take like 1 times 3 and get zero, or -2 and 7 and get zero. If two things are being multiplied and equal zero, one of them has to be zero. So this is the way it's going to end up looking when we're solving equations, is if I have these two things being multiplied and they're equal to zero, then this one has to be zero, or this one has to be there. There's no other possibility for how these two things could equal zero unless one of them is zero. So for instance, if I had this equation, 5x equals 0, the only way these two things can be multiplied to give 0 is either 5 is equal to 0 or x is equal to 0. And of course, 5 equals 0 is not possible, so the answer is x equals 0. Of course, we could have just got that by dividing both sides by 5, but just showing how the zero product property works. But this is more where we'll use the zero product property. We have this kind of thing on the left that's factored into multiple pieces, and it's equal to 0. Again, it's called the zero product property, so it's really important that 0 is over here. But the only way these two things can be 0 is, one possibility is one of the things I'm multiplying by, in this case 3x minus 2. That could be 0. And if that happens, it doesn't matter what the other thing is, because 0 times anything is 0. The other possibility is this term, 5x plus 7. That could be 0. And if that happens, it doesn't matter what the other thing is, because anything times 0 is 0. All right, so these are the two possibilities for the solution to this equation. And you can see I changed this really kind of complicated expression up here into two more simple equations that I can solve, because this one I just add 2 to both sides. I'm just solving a linear equation, and I divide by 3. All right, so I got one answer. If x is 2/3, it makes that left-hand factor 0, which makes the whole thing 0. On the right-hand side, I can subtract 7 from both sides and divide both sides by 5. And x is -7 over 5. Again, that'll make that factor 0. It doesn't matter what the other one's going to be, because as long as that one's 0, it's the answer. That's just as the zero product property in work. We take these individual pieces and we just set each individual piece equal to 0. So taking that to the extreme, you could have as many things being multiplied together as possible, as long as they're equal to 0. If there's any other number over here, this doesn't work. But since it's 0, I can change this equation into x minus 3 equals 0, or x plus 4 equals 0, or x plus 6 equals 0, or x minus 9 equals 0. If any of those individual factors is 0, it makes the whole thing 0 and makes the equation true. So here I add 3, subtract 4, subtract 6, add 9, and I get these 4 answers. And those are the only 4 answers because of the zero product property. All right, so this property is really useful when solving equations. If you can break your equation down into smaller pieces, then you just set each of those smaller pieces equal to 0, and those are a lot simpler to solve. Solving this big thing goes 0, not easy, but solving all these individual linear equations, much easier. All right, so here's one for you to try on your own. All right, solve this equation. And I'll show you the answer in 3, 2, 1. The two answers are x equals -1/4 and x equals 3 over 7. Again, the zero product property just allows me to take this factor and set it equal to 0, take that factor and set it equal to 0. All right, that's the beauty of the zero product property. It turns one complicated expression into simpler expressions. All right, so now's your time to practice. All right, right now, the equations are always going to be set up to use the zero product property. And in the future, we'll look about creating a situation where we can use the zero product property.